Welcome back to Nourished Inside Out, the space where growth gets real and self love leads the way. I'm your host, Annetta Walklaw, and before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you of something powerful. You are worthy, you are enough, and you don't need to wait for permission to love yourself fully. That's exactly why I wrote my book, Blooming with Self Love, to give you the tools, affirmations, and daily mindset shifts to help you stand in your power and own your story. This book isn't just words on a page, it's a movement. So if you're ready to stop shrinking and start showing up for yourself, grab your copy today with the link in the show notes below, and let's walk this self love journey together. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. Today I'm here with Sarah Johnson. She is a breathwork and mindset coach for teens and adults. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anita. I'm so excited to be here.
Definitely. Can you give us a little bit of a background on how you got into breathwork and how it has impacted your life?
Yeah, for sure. So, breathwork has been a massive tool in my life personally, in my own personal journey. I had never really heard of breathwork before, had never really done it, didn't know much about it. But when I moved to Australia from Canada, I spent 2 years living there and I got introduced to breathwork. Um, and it really honestly changed a lot of things for me, my perspective, my life. It became like a top tier, I guess, mental health tool for myself
Mhm.
and my anxiety. Um, so yeah, I have done many different types of breath work. Lots of different types of breath work exist, but because it was such an impactful tool for me, I decided to get certified in it. Got certified in it in Australia, and now I use it to teach other people, which is really exciting.
Is breathwork the same as meditation or is that completely different?
So, breath work is not the same as meditation,
Okay.
no, but breath work is definitely an aspect of many things in the wellness space, like yoga, like meditation. If you've ever done, a yoga class before, a stretching class, a meditation class, usually breath work is involved. There is a piece of that involved in those other practices as well. However, breath work, I mean, if you just, type it in on a Google search or, on Instagram or TikTok and you look it up, most of the time what will come up is breathwork journeys, which is like
Hmm.
extended breathwork that you do for maybe up to like hours at a time, really focusing on the breath and different breathing patterns. So that is like what most people are used to seeing. It's usually a very like transformative experience. A lot of emotion comes up. It's really great for like trapped emotion in the body. Um, and then the type of breath work that I tend to focus on with my clients is like functional breathing. So, functional breathing is your breathing, how you breathe every single day. Breathing is a part of your autonomic nervous system, which means that your body doesn't have to think about it to do it, right? Just like the same as your heart pumps blood to the rest of your body, your lungs breathe in carbon or oxygen and out carbon dioxide to function and keep you alive. But a lot of us are dysfunctional breathers. So I tend to teach young people a lot about um, seeing whether their breathing is functional or dysfunctional, and then how that impacts how they feel in the rest of their body.
Wow, that's really interesting on what you said that a lot of us are dysfunctional breathers. What is an example of somebody who is a dysfunctional breather and how does that form? Like, is it something that comes from childhood? Can it come from trauma? How does that come to the surface?
Yeah, so a lot of it is actually through evolution, just like our daily life and the way that we live it in the modern day of 2025. So it's not something that, kind of like happen. It can happen depending on, your health conditions and things like that. So dysfunctional breathers, usually people, if you have asthma or any type of like lung related issue, immediately you're having like dysfunctional breathing. For normal people who don't have like those underlying health conditions, dysfunctional breathing can also come up in things like if you experience a lot of anxiety or panic attacks. If you are a person who is a mouth breather at night, So if you're breathing
Mm.
with your mouth open, potentially snoring, insomnia, sleep fatigue. So if you're a person who, you could sleep 12 hours a day, you wake up and you still feel really tired, your breathing can actually be related to that. And then the other thing is also people who are really shallow chest breathers. So sometimes some people will notice, if you're a person that feels like your natural breathing when you're not thinking about it is kind of normal, but in your upper chest, and then you have a need to kind of take in larger breaths to feel like you're getting enough oxygen. So sometimes that's a feeling of breathlessness, we call it,
Mhm.
even at rest. So usually most of us experience breathlessness when we're doing like exercise, right? You feel that need to breathe a little bit harder. But if you're experiencing breathlessness when you're at rest, so if you're sitting, you're laying down, in a relaxed state, that can also be a sign of dysfunctional breathing. So it's something that can develop over time. Most of us, when we're born as babies and toddlers, if you've ever watched like a baby when they're sleeping, they breathe pretty perfectly. But just through growing up, through evolution, through your daily life, that can change and become impacted. And it's not necessarily something people are very conscious of, but it is something that can be connected to a lot of other underlying symptoms.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How long do people typically work with you? Is it something that do they take classes and courses over a couple of weeks, couple of months, or is it something that is like every couple of months?
Yeah, so it depends on client goals. I've
Hmm.
worked with lots of different people. Usually, when people come to me, that first session, it's a lot about assessing whether you're a functional or dysfunctional breather. So most of the time, I'll get people who are coming who have those symptoms of dysfunctional breathing. So things like problems with sleeping, insomnia, asthma, fatigue. I've even had and worked with people who vape and want to quit
Mm.
vaping, which is like a really big thing nowadays. And it's kind of funny that like, breathwork is an oxymoron basically to vaping. It's the exact opposite. But it can be like a tool for that. So usually we do functional assessment first, and then it just depends on the client goals. I've also worked with people who are athletes and who want to, increase um, their lung capacity and their performance in terms of like athletics, if you work out, if you're in a sport, things like that. But usually, uh, over the span of, I would say, 3 to 4 sessions, if you're just looking to like function your breathing from a dysfunctional state, that's probably what you would need. And what I work with most general clients who come to me, it's like 3 or 4 sessions. I teach you some, tools that you can practice every day. And then hopefully over those like 3 or 4 weeks, you see some improvement. I have worked longer depending on, just what the client goals are. Like I said, if you're an athlete, I've worked with people who ongoingly maybe are like training for a marathon, an ultra marathon, or something like that. Then we're going to see each other more and kind of build on that.
Yeah, how long does it take for somebody to start incorporating it into their daily practices? Is it like 5 to 10 minutes? Do they do it for an hour a day? What does that breakdown look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, it again, every client I have is like individualized, right? So
Sure.
I try to work best with whatever time you have. Most of us are very busy, right? We don't have a lot of time. And if I'm, suggesting another thing, it's like, oh my God, I have another thing to add to my routine. And we all know what that feels like as adults, right? It can be overwhelming. But in order to see the benefits, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe once or twice a day, you'll start to see like pretty immediately some benefits and an increase in, usually the number one is sleep and fatigue. So sleep quality for people, that's what they see. But yeah, 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, of course, once you start developing the knowledge and the exercises, I have people who like to do it for 20 minutes a day or longer, but it definitely is up to personal preference. But I personally like to keep things really short. I like to keep it easy because that's what, most people are looking for. You want it to be accessible. And my favorite thing about breath work is that, it's free. Everyone has access to it. You just have to learn the exercises, and then it's up to you to incorporate it how you see fit.
Very well said. What was like the initial prompter for you to get into breath work? Was it something like personal experience for you that you were feeling fatigued or not sleeping well enough? What was that prompter for you? Because I think a lot of times we might think, "Oh, we breathe well and we don't need to work on it." But what was that prompter for you and how can people start to identify maybe they do need to take breath work exercises?
Yeah, so for me personally, the prompt was definitely my struggles with anxiety.
Mm.
So I went on a pretty lengthy, I would say, like mental health journey of my own and trying a lot of different things to help with my anxiety. And my anxiety was something that was really kind of running my life in my early and mid 20s. Um, so it was affecting my daily living, like not being able to get out of bed in the morning, having like anxiety or panic attacks, feeling really stressed all the time. Um, and I had tried a lot of traditional methods for many years. I'd been, to therapy for quite a long time. I'd been doing like DBT style exercises and journaling and things like that. And it just, nothing was really clicking. Nothing was really making that difference that I needed in my day to day life to feel a bit of relief. And breathwork was actually, introduced to me, like I said, when I lived in Australia, and it was very kind of one off. I had no information prior about it, but I was kind of at a point in my own journey where I was like, I'll try anything. If somebody suggested, I don't know, painting or something like that, like as a solution, I probably would have tried that too. So I was just personally at a point where I wanted to try anything that maybe would have an effect on how I was feeling every day. Um, and yeah, it just happened to be the thing that, really worked for me and really clicked. And again, it was something that, I could do once I learned about it. I didn't have to, ongoingly pay for it, which can sometimes be a barrier for some people. And it was easy to fit into my schedule. If I did it for 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, immediately my entire day shifted and I felt a lot better. I think a big one for a lot of the people I see in a big way that others who are potentially listening can kind of do like a self diagnosis if this is something you might be interested in is definitely quality of sleep is
Mm.
number one because everyone values their sleep, I'm sure, and you can easily assess, when you're feeling fatigued. So if you're a person that again, like I said, sleeps the proper amount. So you're getting at least 8 hours of sleep and you're waking up and you're still feeling tired. Breath work could be a solution for that. It could be something to increase your fatigue symptoms. If you're a person that, hits that kind of like midday peak where after lunch you feel like I could take a nap now, I'm feeling really tired. This is something that breath work could also help with. And then the other big one too is if you have ever experienced any issues with concentration. So for
Mm.
teens and kids that I've worked with as a teacher, ADHD or concentration issues, deficits, are definitely something that comes up pretty frequently. And this is something that's becoming more prevalent in adults as well. So if you have any issues with concentration, you feel like, can't concentrate, can't get tasks done, are struggling to like make it through work days or school days or things like that, that is another kind of, I guess, red flag you could say to use to be like, breath work could be something that could help with that.
I really like how you went into that because I think a lot of times when people do have anxiety, depression, or not able to sleep well, or even just focusing, just simply focusing on tasks, we immediately go to some kind of medication or
Yeah.
just drinking more coffee and over caffeinating. But the reality is, it's in those little habits that you can adjust to become better, like with your breath. When I think when you can control your breath, then you can have more control over what you do and your thoughts and your actions. Is I know you mentioned that you got certified in breathwork in Australia. Is it something that's common in Australia? Because I feel like in the US, I don't really hear about it that much. So, what's the culture of around breathwork like in Australia?
Yeah, so definitely something that's super popular and growing for sure. It's definitely growing here, I have seen. over in like the western side of the world, but in Australia, for sure, it's a huge, tool that people use and access. Um, in my experience of living there for 2 years, they have a very different approach towards mental health and mental health resources than we do in like the U.S. and Canada. It's a lot more holistic. It's a lot less, like you said, away from things like medication or caffeination or things like that. So breathwork is definitely a huge resource over there. It's a huge tool. A lot of the times it's linked with like the meditation, but it is really its own, separate practice. And a lot of people offer breathwork journeys. They offer breathwork courses, certifications, obviously. But yeah, it's definitely a huge tool that they use over there because again, like I said, it's free, it's natural. You don't have to take anything for it. And like you said and mentioned, if you're able to control your own breath, it really can change a lot of things in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is, I know I asked you this earlier, but what is the difference of meditation and breath work? And like, I guess my question would be, do you encourage people to meditate along with the breath work, or do you just solely work on the breath work?
Yeah, so again, it is two very separate practices, right? But all of these practices, things like meditation, yoga, mind, it all kind of falls under that wellness and mindfulness umbrella, if you want to say, right? And
Hmm.
it's all about kind of looking inwards, right? And that's not something that a lot of us have time for necessarily or make time for to do, right? Because our lives are so busy. We're constantly in interaction, with technology, with our phones. We're getting flooded with information all of the time. And I think the number one, thing that I hear from people that I work with, whether they're adults or whether they're even kids, is that people are very aware of the lack of like connection they feel within themselves. And that time to just, even to take 5 to 10 to 15 minutes of your day to really just sit with yourself, your body, your emotions, your mind, your thoughts. Um, it really does like transform your life, and it seems really simple and almost to the point where, when I talk about it sometimes I'm like, it sounds so ridiculous because it's so simple, but it's just something that really requires a lot of practice for the way that we live our lives now. It's just not something that we think about. We, spend all day at work or at school, and we're interacting with people and we're looking at information online, and till even the moment that you fall asleep, right? You're looking at your phone, you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram. You're not really sitting with your thoughts. So, breathwork and meditation, again, falls under that kind of wellness umbrella. But meditation really specifically works a lot on the mind. And it is a really hard practice. I practice meditation myself, but it took me many, many years to really get into meditation because it is very difficult at the beginning when you're used to, that kind of having those ping ponging thoughts all the time and always thinking and having your brain switched on. It's hard to kind of settle that. Breathwork is more of the somatic version of that. So, somatic basically means that embodiment, the feeling in your body, right? So, because you're actually breathing and you're physically doing that, can sometimes be a little bit easier to focus on versus just focusing on the thoughts in your mind. Usually, when I am running breathwork exercises, I'm the one that's taking you through it. So there is an element of meditation in some scenarios, depending on what breathwork exercises we're doing, because, I'm guiding you. The only thing you're doing is really listening to my voice and going through the exercise. But again, it just depends on what type of exercises, we're choosing to do together. But they do kind of go hand in hand. Usually when people start doing one, it kind of comes along with the other and vice versa.
Yeah. Can you explain what the difference is when people are focusing on their breath? What's the difference of when you breathe out of your nose versus when you breathe out of your mouth?
Yeah, so that's a great question because this is probably the primary indicator of dysfunctional breathing. So if you're a
Mm.
person that mouth breathes and you sometimes people don't notice, sometimes people do notice. So a good way to check this, like a hot tip for anyone who's listening, is When you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning, if your mouth is dry, that means you're a mouth breather. So your mouth has been open during the night, you'll wake up with a dry mouth. Um, Sometimes people are also mouth breathers during the day. This is probably a little bit more prevalent in kids and teens. It can be, just because of the way that, their bodies are changing in the development. But mouth breathing is definitely primary cause for dysfunctional breathing, because when you're breathing through your mouth, there's absolutely no filter, right? Your nose is the one that is filtering air in and out through your body. The other thing is when you're breathing in through your mouth, it might feel like you're getting more air, quote. So if you take a big deep breath in, like that makes it feel like you have a lot of air coming in, right? But it's actually not the case, because you're breathing into your upper chest, which isn't bringing the air down into your lungs. Versus when you breathe in through your nose, it actually brings the air more throughout your body. It's traveling down into the lower part of your lungs. So mouth breathing is like the primary thing. If I have somebody come to me, that is the first thing that we talk about. If I can identify as a mouth breather or not. If they wake up in the morning, with a dry mouth, as I said, and then what we can do to fix that. So nasal breathing is definitely better. It's better for oxygen consumption. It's better for the expulsion of carbon dioxide, and it just regulates your breathing in a better way.
That's really good because I remember when I was younger, I would always wake up and like my mouth would be so dry. And I'd be like, oh my God, like I feel like I need to drink a gallon of water. Because I was always like breathing through my mouth. So that makes sense now. But I think over the years, I've like learned how to breathe through my nose. But still, it's a continual work in progress. What is like the youngest age group that you work with and start teaching these principles to?
So it really can start pretty much at any age. I would say the youngest that I've personally worked with is around like a 6 to 7, 8 year old kind of range. Um, Again, everything has to be individualized, right? The breath work that I'm doing with adults is definitely not the same as the breath work that I'm doing, for kids. Their attention span is shorter, their ability is shorter, um, their kind of consciousness of their body is changing and developing quickly, so it's a bit more difficult. But the principles of breath work and its abilities to change your emotional state, whatever that is, whether that's, anxious, sad, angry, upset, panicked, whatever that is, it can be used at any age, right? Because those are all human emotions and we all experience them, no matter whether you're 6 years old or 66 years old.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think that's really cool though, like when somebody can come to you at such a young age, because that also sets them up with that knowledge for the long term. What do I guess the question would be, when do people mainly come to you? When they know it's an issue or they want to regulate it before it becomes an issue?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely like you said, it's great that it's accessible to all ages. I find that a lot of the like younger end, it comes from the inquiry of parents, right?
Hmm.
So, or vice versa, right? So, because breathwork is also a great tool that I teach to parents that they can do with their kids. And it's something that you can do as a family, it's something that you can do together, especially as part of like a routine. So, if you have young children and you're trying to establish things like, a morning or evening routine, this is a really good thing to add to it. I would say that in general, the demographic that comes to me the most is definitely that adult age range. So I would say like 20, in your 20s plus type of thing, because that's when you definitely start feeling the health effects on your body. So I've worked with a lot of, young people who are in university. That's a really, trying time. University, college, your sleep schedule is kind of all over the place. Your health isn't necessarily always your priority. You're juggling stress, academics, maybe a job, all of those things. And you're starting to feel that toll on your mental health as well as your physical health. So that's a big demographic that, comes to see me. And then I also have like the older age, anywhere from like 30, 35 plus, when that's primarily when you see a lot of the issues with sleep, right? Because maybe
Mm.
now you're kind of settled into your adult life, you're not partying all the time, your sleep schedule is pretty regulated, but you're still not, getting that full restful sleep. This that range also comes with a lot of people who are working on their potentially physical health. So people who are athletes, working towards fitness goals. Um, I've also worked closely with other practitioners, so like personal trainers, physiotherapists, because this is a tool that they can use with their clients as well. If you're in personal training and you're building up your physical health, and then breathwork is like an excellent addition to that practice that you're already investing time in.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So, I have a question for you, Sarah. What does it mean for you to be nourished inside out?
That's such a good question. I think for me to be nourished inside out, it starts definitely with the inside. Like I have spent on my personal journey so much time nourishing that inside part of me. One of my favorite, I don't know if it's a quote or something that I read somewhere a very long time ago, is like, the number one relationship you have in life is the relationship with yourself, right? Because you are with you 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're not comfortable in your own body and your own thoughts and your own mind, it makes life really difficult. And I say that coming from a place of I understand what that feels like, because I used to be very uncomfortable as well. And I just think being able to have control over things like your mind and your breath and your body, it really changes your life and your outlook, your mental health, and your physical health.
That's incredible. It really does start from the inside, and I think that's so beautiful. So, can you please tell us where can people stay in touch with you and where can they support you in your work?
Yeah, for sure. So if anybody is interested in learning more, about breath work, if any of the stuff that we obviously talked about today you identify with and you want to learn more, please reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram is Bigger Things Project. I'm sure we'll be tagged in this episode. But yeah, definitely reach out. I love to talk about it. I'm like a huge nerd about it. So if you have any questions, if you have any like follow up, if you think you might be someone that could benefit or you're interested in trying it, then yeah, for sure, reach out.
Amazing. I'll have all of that linked down in the show notes below so people can stay in touch. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Nina. It was a pleasure.